Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages as they come in. Time then to see what is making the headlines with the columnist for The Eye, Ian Dunt, and the broadcaster and former government minister, Anna Soubry. I think Ian's going to join us soon, Anna. Plenty more from both of them, hopefully, until just before midnight. So, front pages then, let's start with the Financial Times. It previews the Prime Minister's address to the Tory party conference tomorrow, in which he's expected to criticise businesses over their reliance on high immigration. That also makes the front of the Express, which quotes Boris Johnson as saying, "We've got the guts to fix Britain." But the Metro says, no, he can't, focusing on the PM's assertion that the private sector and not he should be primarily responsible for ensuring an economic recovery. The Telegraph hears Mr Johnson will promise to make Britain a high-wage economy. The Times, meanwhile, says the minimum wage will be raised in the coming weeks. The Daily Mirror likens Boris Johnson to his predecessor Margaret Thatcher and accuses him of having no heart over the scrapping of the £20 uplift to universal credit. And The Star criticises Conservative Party chairman Oliver Dowden for saying people should get off their Peloton exercise bikes and back into the office. The paper points out those bikes often cost in excess of £1,300. And the Daily Mail leads with a threat from French fishermen to blockade Calais and the Channel Tunnel over a row about fishing permits, while The Sun claims that France diverted 5 million doses of coronavirus vaccines originally destined for the UK. While The Guardian carries more allegations from the Pandora Papers, a leak of 12 million documents detailing hidden wealth, tax avoidance and money laundering by some of the world's richest people. Well, he's here, Ian Dunt and Anna Soubry. Ian, welcome to you. Anna, thanks for standing by for us. Nearly a clean sweep of all the newspapers there, Anna, focusing on what we're expecting to hear from Boris Johnson on Wednesday. His plan, as the Telegraph puts it, to have the guts to make us a high-wage country. What are your thoughts?
Well, this really is quite extraordinary. You have a Conservative Prime Minister who served, of course, in the last Conservative government led by Theresa May, talking about a broken economic model that our country has apparently suffered from for some considerable time during both Labour and 11 years of Conservative government. Now, I don't agree with him that it's a broken model, but I just find it extraordinary that he's suddenly coming out with this stuff, and it is stuff, because there's no basis to this. You know, I was a business minister, and we struggled with this issue about productivity and why we have low productivity in Britain. And I can tell you that in all the discussions with a huge raft of people of different political persuasions, from all sections of our businesses, from people who were economists and so on and so forth, it was never suggested that immigration was suppressing wages and was somehow undermining the British economy and the fortunes of the British people. On the contrary, thanks to immigration and the free movement of people from the European Union, we could plug the gaps in our labour market. And what Johnson's doing is, first of all, he's blaming everybody else and he's accepting no responsibility for anything. And he is coming up with some Mickey Mouse set of ideas whereby almost overnight, by the time of Christmas, we are going to have highly paid, skilled jobs to plug the shortages, whether it's people preparing turkeys, whether it's in the slaughterhouses, whether it's in all these other sections of our manufacturing, food processing, HGV drivers, and all of this is magically going to be done in a matter of months. It's for the birds, and it's extraordinary, not only in its content, but frankly, the fact that he seems to be getting away with this nonsense.
Yes, and throwing out the tease, if we see the Times, of an increase to the minimum wage. But certainly the central charge listed by the newspapers, including the Telegraph, as we saw there, is that he will reject uncontrolled immigration to fill labour shortages and keep wages down. Amidst the supply chain crises, do you need to find some defence, Ian? Is that the root of this, do you think?
Yeah, of course. It's the sticking plaster that he throws onto a crisis which was of his own making. And you can almost see the meetings that take place in Downing Street. They're like, okay, well, how do we turn this to our advantage? And their idea of how you turn it to their advantage is you turn it into a dynamic between immigration on the one hand and higher wages on the other. And they think, well, what do people want? They want less immigration, they want higher wages. So we will just pretend that this crisis that we have allowed to take place, that we were warned about for half a decade, is in fact the result of this completely new dynamic, which puts us in the best possible light. If Boris Johnson cared about higher wages, there were many things he could have done, whether he was in the EU or whether he was out of the EU. He could have increased the minimum wage some time ago. They could have invested in skills and productivity some time ago. They could have helped trade unions to sit with employers when they work out wages and wage rises. The worst way to increase wages is what we're seeing right now, which is you have shortages of labour. So you have some workers get an increase in their wage, but what happens to someone who's a nurse? Right? She's not getting an increase in her wage. He isn't getting an increase in his wage. So instead, products become more expensive. Yes, because of inflation, because of fuel price rises, but also because there is a labour shortage and others are getting more wages that is then passed on to the product. So if you want to create some kind of equal way of rising wages, this is the exact opposite manner to that which you would pursue it.
Well, just on that issue of the minimum wage, the newspaper suggesting that the minimum wage paid to people over the age of 23 will increase by 5.7%. To someone working 35 hours a week, that increase will be worth an extra £928 a year before tax. So that's the detail of that story. But certainly, high wages, high inflation, any extra gobbled up by the cost of living crises, is all of this being ignored, do you think? Has there been a failure to mention all of this during the Conservative Party conference, Anna?
Well, I think in the fringes and in the margins of it, people will be talking about it and they'll be getting worried because good MPs will be getting the feedback from businesses and their constituents and they'll be getting concerned about it. And I think the thing that was really striking, well, there are many things that were striking about Boris Johnson's many interviews today, was that, it was put to him, wage, remember, he's going to be paid by somebody. And he said, well, business will pay for it. And they said, well, yeah, but business will only pay for all these things, including high wages, by putting up its prices. And the man didn't even seem to. Well, he must understand that he's not fake. He's not. He is intelligent, but he just sort of brushes it all away. And it is extraordinary to think that somebody who can just be in so much denial can be our prime minister. And I agree with Ian. He is the author of so much of this crisis. There is no debate about this, and he's got to take responsibility for it. I just hope the British public just grasp all of this. I'm sure they will.
Yeah,
I hope they do.
But this is presumably what people want to hear. The complaint that the Eastern European plumber charged half what you did, therefore you didn't get the job. I mean, that was the basis. I mean, that was the long complaint for years of people in this country. Anna, you're frowning at me.
I am, because I'm afraid that was there was a narrative that was allowed to grow, and it was the failure of politicians to challenge it. And when you did challenge it, you'd say, well, hang on a moment. You're the person who says you can't get a plumber, and a Polish plumber comes along, living in our country, paying his taxes and his national insurance, and doing you a cracking job. And people said, oh, I hadn't thought of it like that. And if you speak to businesses, as I used to do as a constituency MP, I had businesses in my constituency who genuinely probably broke the law by deliberately going out, trying to employ British-born workers. And the problem that they had, and it's a really tough truth, this, is that there are certain jobs that British people nowadays will not do. And this idea that there's a small army of people all sat at home who can't work, can't find jobs, is for the birds. We have over 1 million vacancies in our country. And when you look at the unemployment figures, yes, there are people who are unemployed. Yes, there will be some people who will want to work, may have finding a difficulty in getting a job. But there are this idea that there are enough people to fill all these vacancies, just not true.
Yeah, well,
and those are the facts of it.
the fruit pickers, the daffodil pickers come February next year might agree with you, but his statement on Wednesday, we are going in the direction in which this country is going, towards a high-wage, high-skill, high-productivity economy that the people of this country need and deserve, in which everyone can take pride in their work and the quality of their work. So that is his message. To the Mirror, though, Ian, now, no alternative, no heart. This is the £20 a week uplift in universal credit, which goes also on Wednesday. And then the Metro, just moving on quickly as well. Can he fix it? No, he can't. Again, reiterating that it's the private sector, not him, who has to sort out the disruption, as this paper says, crippling Britain. So we go back to the supply chain crisis, don't we, there, via universal credit.
Yeah, that's a really interesting front page from the Metro. I mean, the Metro usually keeps it sort of nose dry. It doesn't really have a dog in the fight when it comes to party politics, unlike the Mirror. It's usually quite cautious with the political angles that it takes. It's going in very hard on Johnson, and it's kind of worth paying attention to the bit that they're going hard on. It's essentially his view of, well, this isn't my fault. It's up to business to solve this. Very similar to the way that, David Frost was sort of blaming his own Brexit deal on Remainers and Hilary Benn and the EU, essentially always blamed somebody else. Now that will get you through quite a lot of a referendum campaign. The trouble is, when you're the Prime Minister, regardless of people's views on Brexit, regardless of anything else, the buck stops with you. And that is a moral instruction that Johnson is really struggling with right now. The more that he tries to throw the blame to others, the more it looks like he himself does not have a handle on the crisis. Now, right now, that's damaging. But we're about to head into a very long 18 months, cold weather, high prices. And in that, and of course, if we see the chaos on the roads, the chaos in workplaces, the chaos of people being unable to attain the very basic things that they are typically used to expecting in their lives.
Okay,
if Boris Johnson continues in suggesting he doesn't have a I think it'll prove quite damaging.
Apologies for cutting in. I just want to show the last two papers which were in your list, which we haven't had time to get to. The Daily Mail not blaming Boris Johnson, but blaming the French fishermen threatening to cut off crucial Christmas supplies to Britain.
French.
And the Daily Star, in its usual tongue-in-cheek way, on your bike, mate. Will someone please tell Oliver Dowden his chain has come off, the Tory chairman sparking fear after telling workers to get off their megabucks Peloton bikes and return to the office. So there we are. Two more papers we will no doubt talk more about a bit later on, but for the moment, stay there. Plenty more still to come. More than £4 billion lost in a matter of hours. We will be discussing Mark Zuckerberg's even bad day at the office after the break. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Ian Dunt and Anna Soubry. Welcome back to both of you. So, Ian, let's talk Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, all the bits that people might have missed last night, UK time, that is. Mark Zuckerberg lost $4.3 billion in this Facebook fail and also faced a bad day at the office at the US Congress as well.
Yeah, Frances Haugen, a former employee of Facebook, goes to the US Congress and starts talking in very sort of clear terms about the business model that this company operates on. Now, this is the really damning stuff. And really, she's confirming what we've known for some time, which is that the priority is engagement. And it is in pretty much every way you look online. It is on Twitter. It is on YouTube. It is engagement over minimization of harm. And the kind of tactics that have been used traditionally by social media to increase engagement, to encourage engagement, are very, very similar to what you see in gambling, to what you see in advertising, which is really to provide these sort of red indicators that people are talking about you, that you want to find out whether they like your stuff. Exactly the same part of the brain that's triggered when you pull down on a slot machine and want to see what comes up. What are the next results? It's the variable reward function. Now, Facebook and social media have used this for a long time. They've been aware that there's damage, but they have ultimately thought that engagement was how they made their money. To have someone go up in Congress and talk in simple terms about how this operates is potentially a profoundly damaging moment for Facebook and for other social media companies.
Anna, we're running out of time, so I'm going to move on if you don't mind. I know you probably want to talk about that one as well. But this is a story in the Telegraph that kids at school will have to start relying on tinned food because deliveries aren't arriving of meat and fresh fruit.
Yeah, I first heard about this from some friends of mine that live over in Lincolnshire, where there were stories emerging of parents who were being asked to indicate what meals they would want for their children. Actually, that's something that a lot of schools do anyway. You sort of pre-order 2 or 3 weeks in advance. But this now does seem to be a genuine problem that is connected with these problems in the supply chains and the lack of drivers. And, once people find that their children can't have the choice of meals and there are the things disappearing from the menus, the reality of this will really begin to hit home. And I think we're going to see that increasingly. And as we go into winter, it will only escalate.
Anna?
We're heading for a winter of discontent. We haven't even talked about the NHS yet, but then obviously the papers are concerning, understandably, on the conference speech that Johnson's going to make tomorrow. But yeah, I think this is a genuine problem.
OK. Anna Soubry, Ian Dunt, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.